6 p.m. in Bamako, that is in the northwest region of Cameroon. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me on today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe television. For presentation, I am Immaculate Fogwe. Inhabitants of Fako Division, the southwest region, are raising concerns about the adverse consequences of the administrative ban on the circulation of commercial motorcycles from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. The ban comes few days after deadly attacks orchestrated by separatist fighters in some parts of the southwest region. A similar ban has also been imposed in Dongamantum Division of the northwest region of Cameroon. And the government of Cameroon and retirees are daggers drawn. The National Syndicate of Retirees say it would not comply with the move of the government to deduct taxes from their pension. According to the retirees, deducting their salaries is same as sending them to their early graves. You'll be listening to some of their reactions in the course of this newscast. Those are major stories. Stay with us for details and more. Thank you so much for staying with us on today's edition of the news. Now, our reporter, Asia Lucy Liengo, will be taking us to Menge. It is a locality located in western Bakosi Tombel subdivision of the southwest region, where inhabitants find it very difficult to access nearby localities. They have been suffering after a bridge which links Menge to other localities collapsed. Since the bridge collapsed, it has never been constructed. We have details with our reporter, Asia Lucy Liengo.
For several years, movement in and around Menge in western Bakosi, Tombel subdivision has been difficult. The only bridge linking Menge, Nyandong to other localities had collapsed years back. On daily basis, the people of Menge are forced to cross this river by foot. Menge, which is rich in agricultural products, farmers are unable to transport their goods from farm to market.
Now, so for carry kako for head, when not they all cocoa they there for inside house. Well, how would you transport them? Also, children suffer to cross this river with all the risk. Some of them, especially the kids, even fall off. So far over past week, because they're not there, they not go school. For waiting this time there for come here going to reach Nyandong.
The only bridge the locals struggled to construct by themselves got bad after 6 months.
It took us 3-year development plan of actions for us to implant our bridge. Has just gone up, but then no intervention by any neighboring authority nor government. Now it has fallen. We are appealing stakeholders, brothers and sisters, let them push us to a way for a solution of this matter.
The population of Menge say they have been abandoned by authorities who seem to be giving deaf ears to their plight.
Asia Lucy Liengo reporting there. A young man whose name we got as Vincent Gokam in his 40s has reportedly committed suicide by hanging in Godi Bakoko neighborhood, that is in the Douala 3 subdivision. The real motive behind his action is still to be made public. His wife says they had no problem, while other neighbors claim the victim was living in debt. Annabella tells us more.
Inhabitants of Ngoti Bakoko, precisely of Ndokmbi, still in shock as the body of one of their neighbors, Vincent Gekam, was found hanging from a rope inside his own house. The quarter head of Block Couture explains that the victim had been a loggerheads with his wife for some time now. Besides, he got information that Mr. Ngekam had contracted debts worth about 8 million francs CFE. The deceased best friend, on his part, refutes allegations of his friend being in debt. According to him, if his friend had serious monetary issues, he would have been aware, since they usually share their difficult moments together. Madame Gekam Jadi, wife of the deceased, is completely broken. She is still to come to terms with the cruel manner in which her husband quits the stage. She was fired with her partner before the unfortunate incident. In the morning, he gave me money to cook. When he came back in the evening before he left for the meeting, I served his food. He ate and then told me we should go out and take a sip. We danced well together, and at 1 a.m. we came back home. He ate again and I went to sleep. I later heard the baby crying seriously. I came and got the baby from his arms and I went back to bed. I woke up to eat myself, then saw him hanging from a rope. That's how I began shouting. Medical doctors and security forces were later alerted. The corpse of Vincent Gekam was brought down and examined. Investigations have been opened to ascertain how and why Vincent Gekam hanged himself and if for real he committed suicide.
And on to something else, investigators are on the track of persons suspected to be involved in the death of the Deputy Consul of France in Douala. One major suspect has been arrested in connection to the case. Anna Babila Jonathan reports on that incident.
Munpudei Njoya Ismail, popularly known as Njoya Ismail, is the prime suspect in the case concerning the death of the French deputy consul here in Douala, Christian André Marie Oué, who was found dead hanging in his home here in Cameroon's economic capital, Douala. And the main suspect, Njoya Ismail, was arrested last weekend at the Douala International Airport by forces of law and order. Upon his arrival from France, he was picked up immediately. He came out of the plane and now he's in police custody right behind me in the Littoral Judicial Police. And investigators are going on with the investigations. Both French and Cameroonian investigators are tracking down information concerning the circumstances of the death of the senior consulate staff of France here in Douala. And some sources indicate that Njoya Ismail blackmailed the senior consulate staff by threatening to publish a compromising video, thus compelling him to issue a great number of Schengen visas, not respecting normal procedures of visa issuance. And other sources are highlighting the possibility of suicide. However, investigations are going on and the prime suspect is in police custody right behind me in the judicial police of the Littoral region. Reporting from Bonanjo,
Babila Jonathan.
Yeah, Francois Rodrigue Dikoume and Babila Jonathan.
These are draggers drawn. The National Syndicate of Retirees say it will not comply with the move of the government to deduce taxes from their pension. A tough response to the move of the government to implement the disposition of the law relating to the law on personal income tax rate. The section of the General Tax Code includes pension as the form and sources of income tax. Fomi Armstrong Sanda is the man on that story.
The disagreement stems from the government's move to implement the disposition of the tax law in Cameroon relating to pensions and pensioners in line with Articles 30 and 34 of the General Tax Code. In effect, the government, in a recent document, called on the Director General of the National Social Insurance (CNPS) to proceed with the reduction of this tax from the pensions of pensioners across the country. A decision which has not gone down well with retirees in Cameroon. The National Syndicate of Retirees of Cameroon says the move is unfair and tantamount to an attempt on the life expectancy of pensioners. They are not willing to comply. Luke Wanji is of the National Syndicate of Retirees. We pay taxes throughout our active service life, consistently from our salaries. How then do they want us to pay again on the little savings we did? This is synonymous to anticipating the death of retirees.
On ne peut pas tolérer dans un pays normal, non. Qu'est-ce qui se cache derrière une telle intention?
Il s'agit d'une imposition qui est prévue par les textes.
A taxation expert, Serge Alexis Medjouan, on his part, says the move is simply in line with the disposition of the personal income tax.
Avec une sorte de...
The personal income tax in Cameroon is a tax collected from individuals and is imposed on different sources of income like labor, pensions, interest and dividends.
And out of our borders, Prime Minister Amadou Ba has been chosen to represent his party for the 2024 presidential elections in Senegal and in Niger. Colonel Major Amadou Abdourahmane is accusing France of preparing an attack against Niger. However, Paris denies these accusations. Our reporter Cedric Chakocho has the details.
The latest report from the earthquake in Morocco shows 2,497 deaths. Rescuers, volunteers and members of the armed forces are working to find survivors and extract bodies from the rebels, particularly in villages and in the province of Al House. The epicenter of the earthquake mostly touched the south of the tourist city Marrakesh. For now, Morocco only accepted the help of 4 countries, which are Spain, Great Britain, Qatar and the Emirates Arab. Again, players of the national team alongside some authorities are lining in front of health centers so as to donate their blood, this to help the victims. Over to Niger, on Saturday evening in Niamey, a member of the regime, Colonel Major Amadou Abdourahmane, said in a statement that France continues to deploy its forces in several ECOWAS countries as part of preparations for an aggression against Niger. In this press release, read on national television, the regime says it has observed since September 1st 2 A400M type military transport in Côte d'Ivoire and around 40 armed vehicles in Benin. France, on their part, through President Emmanuel Macron, responded on Sunday during a press conference at the G20 summit this weekend in New Delhi in India. He also added that the France would only take a decision in Niger on the basis of discussions with President Bazoum. Then in Senegal, Senegalese President Macky Sall on Saturday, he designed his Prime Minister Amadou Ba as his camp candidate for the February 2024 presidential elections. Note, Macky Sall, elected in 2012 and re-elected in 2019, announced in July, after maintaining uncertainty for months, that he will not seek a third-term mandate. His camp then gave him carte blanche to choose a candidate.
And that's it for the first part of the news. Talking Point is up next. And on today's edition of Talking Point, I will be receiving Fa Elvis. I will be discussing about the adverse consequences of the administrative ban on the circulation of commercial motorcycles in Fako Division and of course also in Do Division, that is in Dongamantum Division of the Northwest region. Good evening, Mr. Fa Elvis. How is the population of Boya, where you are currently living, coping with the lockdown imposed by separatist fighters?
Well, I think that the lockdown imposed in the restive areas by the separatist fighters has its own repercussions. It has negative effects on the poor population, who are the first persons who bear the pinch of the lockdown. Of course, we understand that they made some adjustments in their programs to say weekends, people could equally adjust, go out, do some shopping and other like. But with the high rates of poverty affected or caused by the ongoing crisis and the general crisis, economic crisis of the country, tells you that those in the areas are not finding it the least easy, I must be able to confess to you. And that explains why it's also affecting even those in the medical field. We understand that those who have emergency health situations and had to move or have to move from one area to another, those who are like pregnant women are also not finding it very easy to cope with this situation. So it is a call for concern that is affecting everyone, even the entire economy. I must be able to admit is also being affected. The economy is also being affected because all those who carry on business operations, councils cannot ascertain their tax policies to collect. The government can also collect taxes. So it is having untold damage on both on everyone, that is the civilian population, as well as the government itself, with the enterprises not being able to function. So it is definitely a call for concern.
And now, after the tragic scene that occurred in Moya in the southwest region, what is the state of mind of the population at the moment?
Well, I will tell you that after the Munya saga in Boya subdivision in the southwest region, the state of the mind of the population at the moment has been that of fear, that of skepticism, that of the fear of the unknown. So you now realize that we are at an era whereby the administrative authorities might say what they tell you, shun fear, do this, do that. But you see, they are highly protected. They move with military. But the civilian population, who cannot have military stations at every corner of their houses, are forced to live in fear because of the fear of the unknown. I'll tell you, after that tragic incident of recent, many persons got very scared, and I'll tell you that the ghost town phenomenon got intensified because no one could tell exactly where the boys could strike at a point in time. And so, in my point of view, I would want to really tell the population that everyone just has to be careful, because life has no duplicate. And so no matter what somebody tells you from somewhere, that shun fear, the question is the person also shunning fear by coming to see you alone? No. And so the tragic incident has really made, especially the population of Munya, Southwest, Limbe in particular, and other areas that were enjoying some relative relaxation on the ghost town days, to think otherwise. And I think that the population are fast becoming to understand that their security lies first in their hands before the government could come to complement.
However, in two separate communiques, the senior divisional officer for FACO restricts the movement of bikes in the town of Boya, Muyuka, Limbe, and Tikwas from 8 p.m. to 6 p.m. Same in Nous subdivision, the Dokamantum division of the Northwest region, where the divisional officer equally bans the movement of vehicles and motorcycles from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Can such bans effectively counter security threats?
Well, I think that from the ban of the circulation of motorbikes by the senior division officer for FACO division, citing a number of towns in his area of command, also coinciding with the communique talking about the restriction of not just bikes but also cars from 8 p.m. to 6 p.m. in the Nous subdivision. Well, we understand these are all security measures put in place by the administrative officials, which we are not refusing. But you see, the question now is whether can these effectively counter the separatist threats. It can only do that to a lesser extent, let me say so. Now, first, we are first of all very much worried because we have administrative authorities who are like selling after the market. We know that Northwest, Southwest, the entire area is a red zone. It's a danger zone. So we're expecting the administrative officials to have been on the alert, because the absence of gunshots in these areas does not mean the presence of peace. No. We understand dynamics have changed. The boys have changed their tactics. They could stay for 4 months and you relax. Before you know it, something is happening. So I think that the administrative authorities will have to sit up and to let them know that putting in place these bans, sometimes the boys can even trek to the place and carry out an attack. So since as we don't understand the mechanism they use, maybe the administrators understand that they use cars, maybe they use bikes, that's why they are banning it. But in a guerrilla warfare, you could put up a strategy and your opponent is always there to counteract. So you might be surprised that they could use another tactic. So all in all, it's a ping-pong game we are playing here, because the administrators will always want to come in after the deed has been done to start effecting bans and all the like, which will continue to affect those who are earning a living in this sector. So sometimes we need to think otherwise and make sure they move closer to the population, who can then act as information suppliers to them, whatever the case might be, or any other method they will want to use, which could go a long way to solve this issue. Well, to me, it has very little effect. Let me be honest with you. It has very little effect as far as this is concerned, because you will see the faces or the issue metamorphosizing from one methods to another. So it still keeps us very, very worried.
There seems to be some kind of resistance to all efforts made to ensure effective back to school. How can we come out of troubled waters?
John, how can we come out of the troubled waters? The issue we should understand is that it's not like there seems to be a kind of resistance. There is a resistance, you see. It's not like there is a resistance. And we can see it very clear on the ground. Even if administrative authorities want to pretend to tell you that no, everything's under control. No, it's not under control. We've been able to see video footages. I saw video footage whether it's Babisi somewhere there in Dock. I could not believe my eyes. If you look at the reinforcements of the ghost towns, the bomb explosion in Limbe, the Munya saga, which we just mentioned, and a host of others, it tells you that there is a resistance that we must be able to admit. And so that we are in a situation where we have what we call, the freshman calls bras de fer. So, you know, there's that power tussle between who has a say on the ground, between the government and the non-state armed actors. Of course, they all have their areas of influence, which we must be able to admit. But at the end of it, while the population are the ones to pay the price, the simple way out for it is that, one, we should be truthful to ourselves. There is a problem. And there are some persons who hold guns, who are also dangerous, just like they can equally go as far as attacking government services wherever they are. So it's a call for control. We must admit that. And if we speak the truth in this reality, we'll be able to begin finding the solution already. Coming out of troubled waters, we equally tell you that the powers that be, if they decide for this crisis to come to an end, will come to an end. Getting a genuine dialogue, all inclusive, with the leaders of this crisis, putting in place measures of conflict resolutions, not the kind of politicking conflict resolution methods, but genuine one, all inclusive. I think if we do all of this, we'll be able to solve this crisis once and for all. Because as I said, this crisis, the way it is, can take as many years as possible. Look at it before. The fighters used to be few, but now, there used to be many, rather. But now there are few, but the few of them who are there, they have an impact which they are causing within the community. And so we just need to be honest that the powers that be should be able to address the issues squarely and not put in place cosmetic solutions which will keep us dragging in the war and we keep getting casualties day in, day out.
Now, what is your take on the use of military force to end the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions?
Well, to me, the use of military force to end this crisis is far-fetched from reality. It is an impossibility. I keep telling people that, and I keep telling even government officials that with guerrilla warfare, it can go as long as the war can take, because it has to do with ideology. And with an ideology, you realize that even when you kill the first person in command, there's another assistant in command, there's third in command, there's fifth in command, and all the like. And what you realize is that in a guerrilla warfare, your opponent, who is not a conventional army, cannot easily be identified. It takes a lot of work by the government forces to put in place intelligence sources to determine who they are. But on their part, they easily identify who is a government forces, who is this, who is that. So it makes it very, very difficult for the government forces to track down on them. And it also becomes also delicate because they can easily spot the government forces, so to say. So at the end of it, I will tell you that it can never solve or bring an end to this crisis. But if, like what I discussed before, can be put in place, the genuine inclusive dialogue without any political motives in it, I think it will go a long way. So this is time for us. I think we should come to our dialogue table because we had thought the war was over. But then from the asymmetric attacks and the loss of lives, it tells us that we still have a long way to go, despite the grammar that the government is telling us that everything is under control. Government, help us put an end to this crisis, just like the belligerents involved in the ongoing crisis. By the end of it, we shall end at the dialogue table and not at the military option.
That was Far Evans, a journalist based in Boya, and we're talking about the administrative ban on motorcycles as from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. And that's all put a cap to today's edition of the 6 p.m. primetime newscast on Equinoxe Television. Thank you, dear televiewers, for your keen attention. See you tomorrow at 6 p.m. same time, God willing.